We'd make a trip over to the message center, come back with a stack of messages that was about 2.5, 3, 4 feet high, just 8 by 10 sheets of paper. And then we'd sit down and read all the messages. And most of them were just about shipments of supplies and ammunition and guns and stuff, and they weren't important. But then the really important ones, we'd put together a message board for, this was at the Marine Corps headquarters for all of Vietnam. And also in the Marine Corps headquarters was the Army Chief of Staff and, let's see, Army Chief of Staff and Marine Corps, that was all, just the two. And we put together message boards for the generals, for the two chiefs of staff to read, so that they'd be up to speed on everything that was going on throughout the entire country. So we'd have to read all the stuff, and then we'd have to determine whether it was important. Then we'd have to determine how important, so whether it went on this side of the board, or the middle of the board, or on the right-hand side, or if it was something that couldn't wait, we'd just have to run over to the general's, either his office, or if he wasn't working at that time, to his house. The generals had really nice houses on the Da Nang River that we built just for them. Oh yeah, we got attacked. Yeah, I remember the first time we got attacked. I was already in bed. I was working the day shift, and so I was in bed at night. It was dark. I don't remember what time it was. And all of a sudden, we heard mortar rounds start exploding, and what they call walking them up the road, because they'd fire one off, and then they'd see where it landed, and then they'd adjust, and the next one would hit, closer to you than that one, but it still wouldn't hit you, and then the next one would hit closer to that, and so it just got louder and louder and louder. And I remember trying to put my boots on to run down in my skivvy shorts to get into the bunker, because normally when that happened, what they do is they'd fire mortar rounds at you, and then when that was done, the sappers would come up, cling to the fence, blow themselves up, blow a hole in the fence, and then the Viet Cong would come running through, and that's how they get into your base. And I remember trying to put my boots on, and my leg was shaking so hard, and my hands were shaking so hard that I couldn't get my boots on, and I finally said, "How the hell with it?" Just threw them away and ran for the bunker with no shoes on, just nothing with my skivvy shorts on, just running for a bunker. And as a matter of fact, that night there was he wasn't a top sergeant, he was a master gunnery sergeant, so just below a top sergeant, which is the highest enlisted rank. This guy had been in 26 years in the Marine Corps, and after this tour he was going to go home. And when they started walking the mortar rounds down the road, up the road, he didn't pay any attention to them. He figured, what the heck, I might as well just stay where I am. He stayed in his bunk. And he was at that rank, he had his own little kind of room. And they landed a mortar round right in his bunk. So he took it right here, and the whole thing just blew up. He'd been in the country for about 5 or 6 days when that happened. He was going to do his 13 months and then go home, but he never made it. Yeah, incendiary grenades, which are grenades that just blow up in fire and make things blow up in flames. And while everybody else was running for the bunkers, our job was to stay behind, and if they broke through the walls, then we'd shove these incendiary grenades in the message files that we had piled up, and it would blow them all up and burn down the whole office. So that's what I was supposed to do. They never had to do it.
So not even that night?
They never got through the wall.
Oh, so they just fired their mortar rounds?
They fired the mortar rounds. They were sappers, but they shot them before they got to the wall. It was like being in a prison inside the cave, because they're all at each corner and at certain parts along the wall, you had these guard towers. And there were 50 caliber machine guns up there. So when the sappers would start running toward the wall, they just mauled down with a 50 caliber machine gun. Cut them in half. I mean, literally, just the top part of the body comes apart from the bottom. We didn't get any culture there because, yeah, we were all the guys that got to mix with the natives, with the Vietnamese, were the guys who were out in the grunts who were out in the field, and they worked with them and they fought them and they got to they got to know both sides. We were pretty much in Little America. We were all GIs and all came from the States and all had the, so it was aside from the fact that the buildings were different and the place smelled bad and it didn't have a lot to offer. Yeah, we were just it's kind of like you took a whole bunch of Americans, picked them up and plopped them in a different country and then put a fence around them. You know, there's not a lot of culture to be learned because you don't get to mix with people. Yeah, it was really strange because, again, you're working 7 days a week and you're putting in 12 hours a day. At least that's what I was doing. The other guys, I mean, the grunts were out in the field. I mean, they were getting attacked in all hours of the day and night, and they were going out on patrols through the jungle. And you know, depending on what kind of a job you had, is what kind of work you did. And but for what I did was 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and then all of a sudden, when I got home, I got out of the Marine Corps. So I went from Vietnam basically to Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's like all of a sudden people are just wandering around aimlessly. There's cars going around, bicycles, restaurants. I mean, it's like culture shock because you've become used to everything being orderly and organized and military. And so it takes some adjusting to remember that you're a regular person again all of a sudden. It's like having to become a different person. You had to become a different person when you went into the Marines, and then when you got out, you didn't have any training for it, but you had to acclimate yourself. And the guys that had the hardest time were the guys who were coming in from the jungle, because those guys just became animals. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of those regressed to the point where their mothers wouldn't have recognized them, and their mothers wouldn't approve of what they'd become. But they had to be that to be able to survive in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And for those guys, when they came home, it was a long and hard adjustment period. It took a lot of time. And some of them never adjusted totally. They carry that kind of stuff around with them forever. I remember walking down Scottsdale Road just north of Indian School. For some reason, I was walking out there, and a car backfired, and I literally dove off the sidewalk into a row of hedges because it was just an impulse, just a reflex. I thought a bomb had gone off because that's what I was used to hearing all the time. And that's the reaction you'd have when you hear a loud noise. That means somebody's trying to kill you, so you get yourself real small real fast. Well, everything you do in life gives you experience that you use later on, or that at least becomes part of who you are. Being in the Marine Corps taught me one thing for sure, and that was that I didn't want to be in the Marine Corps. 3 years was going to be enough, which is why I didn't go to officer candidate school, because I wasn't going to make it 4 years just to be an officer. Mm-hmm. So. But no, there was, obviously you learn things and you get toughened up, and it changes you. But everything you do changes you, whether you know it or not, because you never change like that. You just change a little bit at a time, so that you never notice it until you get as old as I am, and then you finally look back at how you were once and what you are now, and you say,